Who wants a pot of coffee? I just made coffee. You want a cup of coffee? Sure, there you go. Who wants coffee? Anybody else want coffee? Who wants coffee?
And now it's time for the man with the caffeine, the new tropics for the brain. It's Coffee with Mike. Hang in, hang tight, grab your cup, and let's get this thing started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Java Chat, Coffee with Mike. Hanging out with this gentleman here. His name is Heath Schneider. I brought him on the podcast a couple of reasons. One, we're good friends, have been for quite a few years now. We actually met through LinkedIn by chance. And before I get into that, Heath, thanks for coming and hanging out with me. I really appreciate it, brother.
My pleasure, Michael. Good to see you again, buddy.
Good, yeah. So I got to tell the story of how we met because it's hilarious. Everybody knows that I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very active there, and I've been doing some prospecting. And I get a message back, somebody that wrote back and said, "Hey, I have this liquor brand that I could use some help with." And my mind immediately races. What liquor brand did you ever message? I mean, what the hell is this all about? And so we got on the phone, and he happens to be in the mortgage industry, which I was also in, which is like, okay, I get it. Wait, you got a liquor brand? What? You're a mortgage, dude.
Yeah.
So,
buddy.
It was like, talk about left field. This was football, not baseball any longer. I mean, come to find out that he's an excellent gentleman originally from Iowa. Actually lives here in Las Vegas. Now has been here for over 20 years, if I remember correctly.
Since 90. Yeah, 32 years.
Yeah. So he's seen a lot change here, a lot more than I have. I've only been here since 2004. But that was our first conversation was, hey, maybe we can do something together. And we did for a while, and we went our ways, but we've always been friends. His story as far as the company that he has, it's a rye spirit. It's 100%. It's beautiful. It's my preferred. Like, I used to drink a lot of different things when I drank. Not anymore. I've become one of the loyalists. I will carry the banner. I'll throw magnets on my car, whatever he wants me to do. But it's because part of it is because of the story, and that's what we're going to be sharing here today. We always love to have our guests introduce themselves. So take it back to Iowa, brother. How did you get to today? I mean, what's your story?
Oh, an interesting story for sure. At least that's what people tell me. I went to school in Iowa. I'm from a German Catholic family in the middle of Iowa. We always used to joke my grandmother had to ride in horse and buggy 30 miles to meet someone she wasn't related to. So,
oh my goodness.
Kind of the way German Catholics lived in Iowa, and to a certain extent live today. You still go back to that area, and I meet so many people that I'm related to that I kind of am glad I left. It's just a little too close, a little too familiar. But the factory I'm affiliated with is in Iowa, in Carroll County, Iowa, where my whole story, my whole family, all the way into the late 1800s hails from. And my great-grandfather was a German immigrant. He moved into a town called Templeton, Iowa. Templeton, Iowa was very famous for rye during Prohibition, pretty much from the 20s all the way even to today. The town of Templeton, who was known for making a world-class rye, made it during Prohibition, and they were so bold about making it during Prohibition that they hung a jug over Main Street during Prohibition and put Xmas spirits on the jug as kind of a joke. And the feds didn't take it as a joke at all. I mean, they came down hard from other counties. And I mean, the town was behind it. The priest cooked in the rectory and in the basement of the church, again, during Prohibition. And I mean, at that time, and people probably don't put all this together, but we were between World War I and World War II. So I mean, they were putting nooses around Germans' necks for church in Catholic church in German. I mean, this is a fact. You can look it up. They burned down the German newspaper in a town of Denison, Iowa. And my family was dead square in the middle of all this. You know, during Prohibition, my grandmother was doing what she could do to feed some kids, you know, 3, 4 kids at the time. She was married to my grandfather in the early 30s. And in the early 30s, you couldn't sell chickens, hogs, cattle. I mean, you could, but you get a penny an egg. You better to take them home and eat them.
Yeah.
And so in order to feed and clothe her family, my grandma got into business with a guy named Joe Earlbeck, who pretty much ran the Templeton rye whiskey syndication in Templeton, Iowa. And my grandmother was one of the last farmers to house the Bootlegger. I recently found out his name is Wormy Schoenfeld.
Another German.
It's crazy. He lived in my grandma's attic 6 days a week, went out and cooked whiskey all 6 days, went home on Sundays for church because you didn't work on Sundays. And I mean, that went on for almost a year from what I can sense, because, you know, we're going back in time and trying to figure all this out.
Right.
You know, we found the barn, we found the burn mark, we found where my grandfather painted his name on the wall. We found her still, you know.
Yeah.
You know, we actually had dogs in a field searching for barrels because my grandfather allegedly buried some barrels when there was a raid taking place, because the feds were raiding into Carroll County from other counties for 10 years. They were dead set on stopping the German Catholics from making liquor, and the German Catholics were dead set on doing it. So in some weird twist of fashion, my grandmother, who was a fantastic cook, she probably made the best bread I've ever eaten in my life, you know, 12 loaves every Sunday, and or excuse me, it was Sunday or Monday, 12 loaves that would last them through the week. And a lot of people don't know, but making bread and making whiskey are pretty darn similar. You know, I mean, you know, our recipe is water, sugar, rye, and yeast. That is the recipe that made the town of Templeton, Iowa famous.
Yeah.
As you know, I didn't drink at all before I found my grandma's recipe. And candidly, I went in thinking, oh, it'd be neat to try it. Even though I don't drink, I'll have a sip. You know, and I don't drink because I don't have the time to lose. You know, I can't give up a day. So I was really dreading the effects after having, I got pretty drunk. You know, you go to a distillery and meet a guy named Whiskey Rich, and he starts pouring samples down your throat. You know, when in Rome, you know.
Yeah.
So, had a few too many, I suppose. Went out and had a little dinner, and strangely did not feel ill like I do with beer, like I do with wine, like I do with other liquor. And I'm talking about, I wouldn't say violently ill, but somewhere between violently ill and not feeling well.
Yeah.
And I was just amazed because I've always felt ostracized that I couldn't drink. You know, you walk up to the bar, you're with friends, everybody's drinking. Like, hey, what can I buy you? And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't drink. And people are like, oh, you're one of those guys. I'm like, no, it's not like I care. It's not like I don't want to drink. I'd love to drink. But how I feel afterwards is just so horrible. I'm just not interested. So this gave me the license to have a drink once in a while. Not go overboard crazy, but to have a drink. So now my biggest problem is when I go to a bar and they're like, hey, can you want a drink? And I'm like, hey, well, do you carry Iowa Legendary Rye or Sextro Rye? And they're like, sometimes yes, sometimes no. But when it's yes, I'm tickled to death because I can actually have fun with my buddies. Pay for it later. And I think that's because the recipe is a barn to bottle recipe, you know, the company that I promote. So I'm not an owner of the company in any way. I basically promote the company because it's my grandma's recipe. and I lend them money because I believe in what they do, and I believe it's got a place in history. I mean, it was world famous in Iowa, and if you're Catholic, or if you know the Catholic process, it was a funny joke with the Burlington Railroad employees that it was the sign of the cross as far as the Burlington Railroad was St. Paul, St. Louis, Omaha, Chicago. That was the Burlington Railroad. And if you look at it on a map, it's the sign of the cross. So in Burlington Railroad, they called it the sign of the cross. Well, that railroad passes through my grandparents' backyard. Well, that was the distribution channel. They'd stop those trains, put barrels on, and ship them up to St. Paul, ship them down to St. Louis, ship them over to Chicago, and ship them over to Omaha. And that's how my grandma's recipe became world famous. And that's how that town became world famous. So that's my story. And I'm just out here trying to bring it back to the public because I think it's exceptional. I think it tastes great. And I feel that I owe this to my grandma because this story has been told. If you haven't heard of this story, then you're living under a rock, because a brand buys product from what I call the Death Star of liquor, MGP, and puts it in bottles and uses that story to sell their product. And I think that's absolutely 100% the definition of a tragedy. So yeah. I'm trying to take my history back, man. I think my grandmother looks down on me, leads me, puts people in my I don't want to say in my way, but you know, I meet people as I need them, and I'm out here trying to bring my grandma's history back and give her the credit she's due, because we're talking about a woman who didn't do this to get rich. Right. Did it to feed her kids. Yeah. And she made a hell of a recipe. If you have not, I know you have, Michael, but anybody watching this, if you have not tried Iowa Legendary Rye or Sextro Rye, depending on the state you live in, I'm telling you right now, even if you don't drink, try a Bloody Mary, try a pink lemonade, or just try it neat. It will be like nothing else you've ever had, not just from a taste and a mouthfeel perspective, but from a how you feel during and after, because the company doesn't use chemicals, it doesn't malt grains, it does it old school, and it's a recipe that is world famous, alleged to be Al Capone's favorite whiskey, but not the story they're using, the actual recipe that made that town famous. So that's what I'm doing in my backstory.
I'm gonna do some backfill with you, because I remember portions of the story with regards to you and how you got involved. And I want everybody to have a real clear picture as to how this all came to be, because you're here. And while you had like literally left Iowa, intentionally left Iowa behind. So you had no real, other than a call with your sister and brothers here and there, and your cousins, fairly rare connection. How you got pulled back in and of itself was already a cool story. And just so, again, so everybody understands, Heath works in finance. That's his livelihood. He works as he's like basically I believe national sales director for a mortgage company, and is consistently. I was actually kind of surprised when I said, "You have any hard stops?" He's like, "Nope, not today." I'm like, "Really? How unusual! It's Friday." Friday's usually when he's like, "You ain't getting him for anything." He'll text you, but that's about it. He's just that busy. And in the midst of that, you got a phone call. You want to share what that went like?
Well, are you talking about the phone call
with Rich?
Yeah. So Rich's family, Rich Akers, is a 5th generation bootlegger. His family has bootlegged liquor for 5 generations.
And by the way, guys, there's a whole bunch of comedy strung out through all of this. So as we tell the story, you're going to catch little bits and pieces of how this all went down, and you're going to sit there and go, "It's fucking impossible. How did this even happen?"
No, it's divine intervention. I'm telling you, you don't believe in the afterlife. Your past haunts you in the present and perhaps in the future. you just got to hear my story, because if it weren't so, it's just, there's too many coincidences to call it coincidence. And it's what drives me. You know, I mean, you have to be driven to do what I do. Full-time finance national director for a finance company, running a team of real estate agents. And then on top of that, trying to launch a national or international brand is no small feat.
Yeah, it is definitely.
Me getting on the phone with Whiskey Rich. They had a website and they were talking about my grandmother on the website, unbeknownst to me, and they were spelling her name wrong, which I kind of took exception to. I'm like, geez,
why wouldn't you?
You know, my grandma is the OG of rye made in Templeton.
Yeah.
You should probably get her name right. So, you know, that's what drove me into that place. I was going back for a family reunion. You know, that's what Iowa German Catholics do. You go back to Iowa and family reunion, 39 cousins, you know, and, you know, we did that our whole youth, family reunions. That was the thing.
That's so big in Hawaiians too. We do it every once in a while as well. Yeah.
So I go back, and part of that going back, I stop into the distillery and I meet Whiskey Rich. I'm kind of there in an adversarial tone because he's spelling my grandma's name wrong. And, you know, I mean, at the least, if you're going to use my grandma's recipe, which I don't know if it's my grandma's recipe or not, you know, I figured that out later.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it, you should probably spell her name right. So we got through that, and he had levity and we both laughed about it. And then obviously he overserved me and overpoured me, and we started yucking it up. And we end up comparing my grandma's recipe, which she had written down, to his recipe, and it's the same.
Whoa.
It's the same, which is shocking because we didn't think my grandma had shared her recipe with anyone. But through friends of friends, you know, everything by Iowa standards,
all about networking.
Grandma, well, she is in her 90s.
Wow.
And brought their recipe to her, and they're like, well, what do we got right? What do we got? She's like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. They just didn't have it right, but she straightened them out. And then they started making that recipe, and it won 19 international spirits awards against distilleries that are valued in the billions.
Yeah.
And they're out there whooping ass, excuse my French, with a $2,500 still that makes 4 gallons at a time. You know, it's a proprietary still. It's actually a still that was made by a machine shop in Carroll that mimics my grandma's still, with antique marbles in it and removable copper inserts and a pot reflux. I mean, it's just out of nowhere. You know, no one makes stills like this. But I got to tell you, what comes out the end of that thing, you know, to have a little old hole in the wall distillery in the middle of Iowa making product that's whooping ass on an international spirits competition, you know, taking down big names.
Oh yeah.
And it's like out of the storybooks, Michael. So
when I had the pleasure of working with you for the time that we did, I got to see some of those come through, and it was, even though I'm not from Iowa, you know, being a small town Hawaiian boy, or an island boy, if you will, it was always both awe-inspiring and pride instilling to see those things happen. You know, some of the competitions that you won, we still thinking isn't that wonderful? Some of the competitions that you won, I looked at the awards and I'm like, yeah, there were some real big names throwing their stuff in there, and we were dousing them. Double golds. What was the other one? I think we got one that was above a double gold, like in a whole bunch of those, and then regular golds and all that kind of stuff. It just kept winning awards, and as we were pushing out on it. In fact, it's taken a few absolute categories. When we went down to Pasadena, when I was with that one, guys, they have a white, unaged rye that Heath and I both love. I mean, we could sit down and drink that one alone all day. People look at it and go, "Is it moonshine?" It's like, no, it's rye. It's really rye. And it was and they have an aged version they call the Black Label. And which one won the competition for best whiskey in the category? The white.
Yeah.
We're sitting here going, It's not a whiskey.
Yeah, the LA Spirits, best in category. I mean, it's just hard to believe that a barn recipe out of Iowa made 4 gallons at a time has won the Denver, double gold in the Denver Wine and Spirit 50 best ryes, LA Spirits. I mean, I could go on and on and on.
All day.
We're actually in the TAG Awards this weekend at the Delano.
Okay.
And, Tony, who is the master mixologist at Libertine Social, put us on the cocktail menu for a craft cocktail. And Tony, I mean, I'm trying to use names here, so I'll leave his last name out, but you can find him at Libertine Social. We're on the cocktail menu. He made a cocktail with it, and he could make a cocktail with anything. He's one of those guys. Yeah, he's one of those guys. He was brought in by Steve Wynn to be the master mixologist at the Bellagio when he opened the Bellagio, and the Bellagio was a big deal.
Yep.
So to have that cocktail there, it's Black Label. I'm going to enjoy it this week. We've been going back and forth on it, but we entered in the TAG Awards. I'm cautiously optimistic that they'll recognize it for what it is. But here's the thing, Michael, and this is so important. This is a piece of American history. It's from 1932, and it's like being put in a time machine and being shipped back to the streets of Templeton, Iowa, a little town of 350 people, being able to try something that became world famous out of just a little nowhere, nothing town where my grandparents happened to, find themselves, and became part of folklore in the rye, liquor business.
Yep.
And it became so famous that the Chicago syndication came down in trucks on dirt roads from Chicago to get this liquor and to take it up to Chicago. And it was supposed to be Al's favorite gift. Uncle Al Capone, said that this was the best if you could get it. The trick was it usually didn't get out of the region because people would drink it up before it got out. But now,
knowing the flavor and stuff, it's like you look at it and it's like it's just and guys, if you haven't seen the bottles look like the same kind of bottles you would have got back in that time too. So it's a real the labels are beautiful, the bottles are beautiful. The spirit inside is absolutely beautiful. I mean, you can't go wrong looking at this, and it's just like he said, you got a piece of history. The bottles are the same kind of bottles you would have got back in the day.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful.
It's the best whiskey that not many people know about, but that's my job. That's where I was brought in. That's why all these weird twists of fate put me where I am and have me doing what I'm doing, and honestly take every dollar I make in finance, I put it into lending to Iowa Legendary Rye, because you can't create a national brand without having a mountain of product behind you.
Yeah.
When it becomes popular, you need product. Perhaps hundreds of thousands of bottles when it happens.
Yep.
You can see my life savings in loans to Iowa Legendary Rye behind my shoulders here, and that's probably a quarter.
That's not even a quarter of the cost.
Yeah, but I believe in it that much. I truly believe in it that much, and I'm taking my history back. I got a real axe to grind with the company that took the story, sourced the product, got caught taking the story.
Like legally got caught. They got sued and they lost. Got caught.
Successfully, $5 million lawsuit for deceptive trade practice. Jeez. And they still use the story. That's not cool. No. And I'm not cool with it. So I when I go back to Templeton and look at that $35 million bottling facility that's still using my grandma's story, and for that matter, using that town story. Yeah. There's 10 families that made the rye that made Templeton famous. There's 10 families. My family was probably the last and the only one who didn't get busted. Luckily, not They just got the wrong farm when they went to bust my family, my grandma and grandpa. But I'm on a mission to take that story back because it's a great story. It's a great product. And it'd be one thing if nobody used the story, but to use the story and source the product and continue down the path and have a 12-year, have a 6-year, have an 8. How do you have a 12-year bootlegger's recipe? There ain't a bootlegger on the planet that saved barrels for 12 years. You'd be lucky to save them for 12 months.
Yep.
Because it's 15-gallon barrel. It's ready in 12 to 18 months.
That was the whole point.
Yeah. It takes sugar in the mash bill. None of that is true with the brand that's using the Templeton story. And it's my mission. It is what I will do before I'm gone to set the record straight.
Good. Well, yep. And we'll keep talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. Guys, we're going to take a short 30-second break. We'll come back. We'll continue this because there's a lot more to this that's going on and has been going on. And some of the things that he's been doing to overcome. So back in 30 seconds.
Welcome back to Job Chat. Coffee with Mike, sitting here with Heath Schneider, the grandson of the famous bootlegger of Carroll County, who now passionately promotes a company called Iowa Legendary Rye. And we were just talking on the break. It's interesting. Everybody talks about what inspires you, what drives you, what gets you moving in the morning. And he was kind of talking about, the reasoning behind what he's trying to get done has given him the 3 a.m. wake ups. For those of you that have ever woken up in the morning just going, shit, I can't do this. I can't sleep. I got to go do something. And that's what drives him in the mornings. Like he'll wake up at 3 a.m. with that hunger to go get out there and fight again. It's only 6 o'clock on the East Coast, but he's already up and he's after it. You were sharing a little bit about, finance is finance. It does what it does. It is what it is. You really don't have to take a whole day to do it, which one of the other reasons why I need to leave my license hanging again. But that's that stuff's kind of not inconsequential, but it basically feeds the drive that you're after. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's funny how every dollar I make in finance is a dollar I lend to Iowa Legendary Rye, almost in perfect cadence. I have a great month, they have a great need. I have a slow month, they don't have so much need.
Wow.
Whatever it is, I think Jerry Seinfeld in Seinfeld kind of made a joke out of, he doesn't worry about losing 20 because he knows he'll find it later. That's been my finance versus liquor. I call it liquor and loans. That's been my liquor and loans experiences. Every dollar I need is a dollar I earn, and it's almost in perfect cadence, which I find ironic. I'd still say it's my grandmother, poking me in the ass, telling me to, go. Maybe giving me too much, but always giving me enough. And it's uncanny.
Yeah, absolutely uncanny. I watched it happen. We've had times you'll call me up and, hey, guess what just happened? And I just completely astounded every time that those coincidences would happen. We would talk about it. It's like, yeah, this is my life. This is what happens. This is who I just met. This is who I just talked to. This is what just happened, back at the distillery. This is what's going on here. The deals that were going on in and around everything. And it was like, either you are subconsciously really good at manifesting shit, which I can absolutely see as possible. Or there really is, we both have our beliefs. And I'm one of those that's like, look, I know he loves me more than my mom did. Somebody out there does. Because they're constantly pushing for good things to happen, and they've been happening. And albeit the journey's long and slow, we had that conversation a few times.
Yeah.
But things have been building. We have a cocktail now with somebody that we were introduced to, I think over 4 years ago now, was when we first heard about Tony.
Yeah.
And now you're going to the TAG Awards, which is, but for anybody that understands the industry, they'll recognize some of these names when he brings them up. For those of you that don't, to get an award, period, in the spirits world is not easy. You really got to stand out in order to even be considered. And
especially if you're a small brand.
Yeah.
The big brands can buy it. The big brands can sponsor the and that does happen. I know in this layout, you like to talk about trials and tribulations.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the liquor business has as much trials and tribulations of any business model I've ever run across, bar none. And God knows I've seen some business models, but you talk about money. You're not talking about $1 million games, you're talking about $1 billion games.
Well, you already have the challenge with the fact that it's a 3-tier system.
Correct.
That's already the first challenge.
Well, and then each state's tier is different. You think
you have some that are some that are private, and that drove us batty.
I was just laughing about that with the wife of George, who passed at the Las Vegas distillery. I was just talking to her yesterday because I stopped in and was kind of poking around the Las Vegas distillery. And she was telling me about how, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was George, correct?
What is his name? Yes. What was his name?
Yeah, but when George passed, and I was so, it just breaks my heart because, George wrote the rules. in Nevada.
He helped change a lot here for the better.
Yeah,
really good.
You know what? That's a good way to put it. George actually changed the rules for craft brands for the better. You know, he helped the Mob Museum put the stills in the Mob Museum.
Yep.
He did the same for, I lose track of it, but the Ruvo family wrote the rules for Nevada.
Yes, they did.
And you know, that's Southern Glaciers. You know, they are one of the distributors. You know, when the distributor gets to write the law, I can assure you that the distributor will have the power in that state.
Yep.
Because they wrote the rules. And Nevada, for example, is a franchise state, which means once you've sold so many cases, so much volume, your brand is owned by the distributor, and you have to be traded like a trading chip. You can't just leave.
Yeah.
And so when people talk about trials and tribulations, so now take that rule-making process and change it across 50 states. Every state is different and written differently. And then you got the federal laws overlaid on those laws. And then you're a small craft distillery trying to navigate the laws, the rules, the regulations of every single state and the national rules and be competitive in some way with a budget that's 1/1000 of what these places can throw at the rules and regulations, and let's just say bending the rules and regulations to your
Constantly doing that.
Constantly. Yeah, it's not a set rule, never-ending change in the rules with unlimited budgets, unlimited law, money, unlimited, how do we say this?
Resources, basically.
Campaign contributions.
Yeah. No, that's included in resources.
Yeah. And then that's what you're up against. So you can have the best product on the planet. You can really have a product that stands up well above everybody else's, and you go to these awards and win nothing because you didn't sponsor it, you didn't meet the right people, and so to win awards like we have with just a little hole in the wall distillery in Iowa, that's legit, man.
That was one of the joys of, because before I met you, I met George when they first opened. George and I were really good friends. When I heard he passed, I only knew him. I didn't know his family very well, and saw him here and there. And then of course there's Seth is still over there running things. I think, is that correct? Yeah.
Again?
Seth is I think the kid's name, the one that's running.
I didn't get to meet anyone other than the wife, and I feel for her because, you know, even though George made some huge moves and made some great products and so on, it's tough.
Yeah,
it's tough. And I mean, they were working hard, obviously, with both of them on the map.
Yeah.
And now, you know, it makes me think, you know, God forbid I left what I've got going to Laura. Well,
yeah.
And honestly, it would be just so tough because it's such an uphill fight. And just because you're good, just because you're better, just because you're exceptional, just because everybody who tastes your product says, wow, because that's what I go through. You know, I go through a tasting event a week personally and for no money. In fact, I pay to do them.
Yeah.
When everybody tries your product, and you've been there, Michael, you know, we've done events.
Yes, we have.
People are like, wow. Oh, man. Whoa, hey.
No one can believe how good this juice is. No one can. I mean, and it's one of the coolest things to witness because you watch, like the Lee's deal that we were at. Everybody else is all walking around tasting wines and other spirits and everything. No reactions like what we were getting. Like people would stand there and they taste them. Oh, that's pretty good. They come over to us and they're like, where is this from? You know, we start getting that question. We start getting that, and literally the story gets to be shared. People are loving it, and then all of a sudden a crowd just comes in, and we're sitting there trying to figure out how to sample everybody, and who's gotten it, who hasn't gotten, because you know there's that one guy in the back going, okay, one more.
Yeah. Well, you know, taking pictures of the bottles and bringing their whole everybody.
Yeah.
You know, but here's the thing, Michael. That's not enough.
Yeah, that's the crazy part. It just, there's so much more that has to happen. We were talking about this too when we were discussing another major liquor brand one day. The tipping point. Where is the tipping point where marketing versus windfall profits come in, and how much has to be invested in order for that to actually happen? And it doesn't really seem like a fair ROI, especially for the little guys, because it's like,
we're the first generation.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing is people don't realize that some of these brands are multi-generations. They've been handed down from generation to generation to generation. I actually had a vodka brand guy who, and I won't name them, I try not to name names because I don't want, you know, I mean, if they want to bring themselves out, they can tell you. But I had a guy who was 9th generation vodka that laughed at me when I told him I was first generation. He's like, he says, what generation are you of your brand? I'm like, I'm first generation. He's like, he says, you're going to do all the work and get no money. He said, that's your generation. He says, I'm 9th generation. I get all the money and no work. And that's the tragedy. I mean, so, you know, you sit there and you hear stuff like that, and you know, you look at your existence, you question your compass.
Yeah.
You know, and again, especially when you're successful in another field, to the point where I could be golfing every day. I could be taking trips. I could do anything I want. But no, I'm the son of a bootlegger who's got a passion and who refuses to stay down because I believe that my family's history has been stolen, and I'm not willing to stand for it. Not willing to stand for it. And that gets me up every day. And I hope the people that stole my story hear this, because I'm coming for it. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how much influence you have. I have the history. and you can't change that. It's like telling somebody's story, fish story, and then the guy who caught the fish walks in the front of the bar. You better get out the back door because you've been lying.
Yeah.
So that's what gets me. Yeah, I'm crazy, and yeah, some people could call me just plain dumb because I could have it made.
Yeah.
I refuse to accept that. I absolutely refuse to accept that, buddy.
Well, you've taken resources that could be used for what the Catholics might consider not so righteous, and you're putting it into a superiorly righteous purpose. I mean, you're reclaiming what's rightfully yours. One, you're correcting a lie, which is two, and these are all things that are in the righteous side of life, if you will. For those who are that devout, I get it. Biggest thing though is that you've taken on a real mission. You've taken on a real value of yours, which is family, and you're going after it. Nobody can fault you for that, which is really awesome. The inspiration of it's not so much about the brand, it's the reclamation.
Correct.
Of life.
It's not about the money.
Nope.
It's not about the brand. It's about setting things right.
Yep. And that in and of itself is a when you question that compass, it's like it's the moral compass that's driving. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's a lot of people out in the self-development world that will go, he gets it before anybody that I've ever taught. Because that's really what it's supposed to be about. If your morals and values are what drive you, you're going to find success. It may not happen today, it may not happen tomorrow, it may not happen in a couple of years, but it's going to happen. And whatever that becomes, you'll see the fruits of. So while ninth generation man is laughing at you, he doesn't realize you might be getting all that, but you have no real value in it.
Yeah.
You have nothing invested, so to speak. You're just handed shit. That does nothing for guys like us that know better. Because we've all been there and done that.
No, and that's well said, Michael. That's very well said. Whatever anyone, my advice to anyone who seeks passion in their life or seeks drive or seeks purpose is find something that your spirit can get behind. It's not about money. It's not. I meet a lot of really rich people that are miserable. Seriously, it's sad because you look at them and you're like, how can you be miserable?
Yeah, you got everything. Yeah, but I'm not really fulfilled.
Correct. And so anybody who comes to me, because I try to mentor young people, I hire young people. I do, for lack of a better description, a come to Jesus speech with my team that, works for the company. They don't work for me, but I do come to Jesus conversations regularly with very young men, women also, but they're all 30 somethings, 20 somethings. And I only wish that people would have done that for me when I was that age, because I really didn't get started until my 40s, with passion, a passion project. And it's what keeps you getting after 40 and after 50, now at 55, where many of my friends are looking at retirement, actively super excited about looking at retirement. I wouldn't consider retiring if you gave me $1 billion. I would not consider, because I got passion. And you can't price passion. And I have a passion project. And I got an axe to grind. And there's nothing worse than an axe to grind with a stubborn German that was raised that way. I'm coming. And in a good way. In a good way.
I know, it's all good. It's funny that you say that because obviously, I'm half German. My mom was stubborn. My grandmother was apparently very stubborn, and they were a farming family back in Germany. And so when I hear these things, when people say stuff like that, it's like sometimes I wonder just exactly how good the stubbornness is for us in certain things, because it can be both a positive and a not so positive. But you found the positive. You found in it. It's not stubbornness. It's the passion. The why is driving the passion. The passion is going to drive the story, and the story is going to have a hell of an ending, I think. I can't see it not having a hell of an ending. You've got great people working with you. You've got an alchemist, in my opinion, who's just coming up with all kinds of new shit all the time. Guys, that's Whiskey Richards, who I'm talking about. One of the coolest dudes you'll ever meet. Jolly old soul. Really.
He's an enigma. He really is.
Isn't he?
That guy, you talk about a story. I tell his story. Whiskey Richards taught me to use the word allegedly a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say, you keep using that word.
But you want to talk about a guy who's got a story. That guy's lucky to be on the planet.
Considering his history.
Yeah, I'll just tell you, he put over, by his own account, he's put over 250,000 miles on a hardtail Harley, traveling North America. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But for that guy to be around, making my grandma's recipe and mentioning her on a website, and he's just a genius, man. He's always the guy who starts the conversation. Well, I'm not that smart, but, and then, and it's like, I've told him that 4 or 5 times, Rich, quit starting conversations like that, because I know better. You're probably one of the smartest guys in the room. He invents things all the time. We need something to do this, and this. And so, for example, Patriot, our high proof 121.1, 100% rye, blows people away. You've been at the shows. We entered that in.
We converted Scotch drinkers with that. I mean, come on, that thing is so. The thing about Patriot that I enjoy so much. I mean, the first time you brought it in, you had an idea of what it was going to be. In fact, first sampling that we did was over at Southern, because we had brought it in. You didn't even have it labeled yet. It wasn't even ready to go.
Correct.
And the thing that blew my mind was like, it was like a Scotch, but it's a rye. It was hot in your mouth, but the moment you actually drank it, there was no hot. It was just warm, and it didn't burn me, because I'm used to choking on Scotch if I swallow it too quickly.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. And then we started doing it when we finally did bring it in. We started taking it out. I had sampled it, samples, we do events and stuff, and everybody's just like, this is how much? 121. Are you sure? I mean, people are so used to taking the shot in the throat that when they try the Patriot, it's just like, what happened? Where is it? And then this starts happening, and they go,
Yeah.
oh, it's like,
Yeah, the glowing on the forehead is something I've never experienced with another liquor product. It's just literally the forehead glows. You almost feel like your third eye or something coming out. It's
a shock opener. Be careful.
I'm sure people are like, oh, this guy's full of crap, but trust me.
Hey, that's a new marketing campaign, brother. I would say have somebody get out to that world of those people, the healers and stuff, and say, hey, you want to open that chakra up a little faster?
I'm telling you. But so, just the fact that Whiskey Rich came up with that and how he came up with it, you know what? Everything that comes out seems to be a mistake that you turn into an innovation.
Yeah.
Patriot was born out of a mistake that turned into an innovation. And when I tell other distilleries how we do it, they're always like everything we do. They're like, that's impossible. What you're saying is either a lie or it's impossible. And it's like, no, we can run a completely aged barrel through our proprietary stills. And unlike your stills that are like chainsaws, our stills are like scalpels. So we can cut the color and leave the flavor, put it back in a barrel and get two variations of flavor and get a flavor profile that has depth and mouthfeel like nothing you've experienced. When I tell them that, they're like, you're full of shit. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's go to a show and I will pour this 121.1. I'll pour it all night and you watch the facial expressions. People are like, wow.
Yeah, they are.
Never had anything like that.
Yep.
So, again, coming from a little old barn, from a little old lady that made bread.
Yeah.
So we use bread baker's yeast. Nobody does that.
Yeah.
We use sugar. I actually noticed that at the Las Vegas distillery, they have a thing called rumski. And I was like, that's kind of an interesting idea. Sugar and rye. And, everybody's like, well, you're not a whiskey. And it's like, well, by the TTB standards, I am. We certainly ran that through. But what am I supposed to do? Change the recipe that made the town of Templeton famous?
Hell no.
I didn't do that.
Hell no.
So it's definitely paving your own road, creating your own product, and being sure enough that it's unique enough and it's special enough to where you don't have to change a darn thing. Just cut your path, tell the truth, and lean into the fact that you make something that nobody else can make. Even if they knew what we did, they couldn't make it. There's value there, Michael.
There's insane value there. Guys, we're going to take one more 30-second break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the different products. We'll go through it. And then, of course, where you can find our legendary ride. There is a .com. All the links are always below. You guys know that. And then how to find Heath if you ever want to ask him a question. Give us about 30 seconds. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, back here, Job Chat, hanging out with Heath Schneider, the grandson of the famous bootlegger of Carroll County, Iowa. Also, huge promoter of a brand called Iowa Legendary Rye, which we've been talking about for most of the podcast. And I did have the opportunity to work with him for a while. We had some good times. We really did. We did some interesting things in the time that I did work with them. And they're still building, they're still growing, they're still going, which I'm really thankful for. Because again, it's like all I drink now. That and cognac is about the only two things I'll ever hit. So it is a brand that if you haven't had the chance to try, want to go real quick through the different labels and what people can expect to taste as a flavor profile. And then we can talk about where to find that, where to find Heath, because Heath's story is definitely something that you can sink some meat hooks into as far as figuring out the why and seeing what it does to somebody. I mean, it really does matter. So there's 4 expressions still at this point. There's 5. Oh yes. How can I forget the vodka? Oh my gosh.
Right.
Yeah, guys. Okay, so I'm going to start with the vodka only because of what has happened at the times that I was at tastings, and because it's personal experience when I did tastings for Iowa Legendary Rye. Literally had Russians come up. I said, "Here, would you like to try some rye vodka?" And they snicker a little bit or scoff a little bit because they're like the masters of it back in Russia. They make it in their own backyards. And I can remember 2 or 3 different times a Russian would come up, they'd smell it, take a drink, and they'd look up. And this is classic Russian. Take a sip, think for a second, look at the bottle, grab the bottle off the table, and walk over to the cash register. I'm looking at him going, I guess I need another bottle. I could walk out and go get it. But it's
100% rye vodka. 100% rye vodka.
It's the one guy said, my mom makes rye vodka like this. How did you figure this out? And I would explain, the process. And he's like, okay, I understand. And then he would grab the bottle and he walked, and I was just like, we need to get out the Russian community. What the hell? You know, I mean,
Yeah.
plus we're cheaper than it's of quality or better, like the big brands that mass produce their stuff, but cheaper.
Yeah, the you know what I like about the vodka is it's got a sweetness to it from the rye. We
Mhm.
use a stereo rye, not your typical rye for
Yeah.
liquor.
Yeah.
And we get it nice and plump, and it's grown in what I believe to be the best topsoil on the planet. It's Wisconsin glacier soil that was dragged down to, of all places, Carroll County, Iowa, is about right where the glacier stopped,
Yeah.
and all this deep, dark, black, rich topsoil from northern North America. Put it right in my grandparents' backyard, and we grow it right in it. So sweet and soft, and just my biggest complaint with vodka is it smells and tastes like nail polish remover typically, and that.
No, yeah, normally it does. It's horrible stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm not a drinker, so don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that just scoff at me saying that. But remember, this coming from a person who doesn't typically drink, who doesn't enjoy most liquor. In fact, I only drink what we make, and that's because it's the only thing I like. You could put me on a lie detector test, I would test truth on that statement. But like you say,
I can vouch for this because I've seen your expression when there's anything else other than what we have. You're just like, that's nice.
I've
tried. Yes.
No, I've tried. I go to distilleries all the time, and you go through the process of, well, you try mine and I'll try yours. You don't want to be disrespectful, so
Right,
I
exactly.
will try other people's stuff, and I don't want to be.
All right, let's put it this way. The times that we went out and we did try other people's stuff, because we have, it's the conversations after we've left that had me laughing.
I almost get an instant headache from seriously. I'm not kidding you.
Or the other side of it, which is Whiskey Rich's opinion of anybody else's stuff. It's weasel piss.
Yeah. No, I mean, I got to tell you, if you had me on a lie detector, I'd be straight across.
Yeah, I can well vouch for that.
I would like to do a lie detector for people just so that, because I'm sure they're like, oh, this guy's just selling me a line of bullshit. It's like, no, I'm serious. What we make is exceptional. It's a little over I would say it's 20% more than most products cost. Like, you can get a bottle of Tito's for $20. Ours is $29. So yeah, you're gonna spend $9.
Tito's is ether, dude. That's all it is.
15 servings of less pain.
Well, and much more enjoyment, because Tito's is literally. I don't know if you know this. I think I shared it with you. When Tito's didn't have their big distillery, Las Vegas distillery used to fill those big plastic cubes with shine and send it off to Tito's for them to process and bottle. So essentially, Tito's, and sorry, Tito's, I'm sure you guys are gonna be mad at me for saying this, but I don't like your stuff. I've tried it.
Well, they source it. They source it. I know they source it, again.
Cheap makes a great drink. No problem.
if you like vodka that is non-offensive, as non-offensive as any vodka out there, Tito's, because they distill it 6 times, and let's keep in mind the purpose of distilling is to beat the flavor, just completely beat the flavor out of it 100%. I mean, your goal as a vodka is to create a non-taste alcohol you can put behind juice and get drunk.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be honest. That's not the vodka I make. That's not the vodka I make. I make a vodka you can enjoy. You can put it on the rocks and enjoy the sweetness. You can enjoy the softness. You can enjoy the mouthfeel. It adheres really well to juice. Now, for some people, that's not worth $10 extra per bottle. For me, I couldn't consider anything else, because you got 15 drinks in a bottle, 50 mLs.
Yeah.
That's not a plain bottle size. So you got 15 servings divided by $9. So you're going to tell me that you want to save 40 cents per drink to taste something that has a nail polish remover smell and taste, and potentially will make you feel like garbage for the next 2 days. I don't understand that.
So because of
But you're right.
because I talk to a lot of younger generations, they sit there and go, it's all about the budget. I'm like, but you're losing money, guys, because you're sick the next couple of days, having to get that out of your system versus just enjoy it and feel good. And then I've shared ILR with them, and they just look at me. They're like, I see what you're talking about. I'm like, yeah. This is something that would much better serve you as a consistent, drink, whether you use it as a mixer or straight.
Well, I'm coming from Iowa. I can tell you, I can buy a gallon of ethanol. Ethanol, the stuff you add to gas. Well, that's where most vodka comes from, in case you don't know. The ethanol plants in Iowa sell a gallon of ethanol for $1.59 a gallon.
Jeez.
And that's 190 proof, and it's used to run your car. So then you just take that and you distill it and distill it and distill it and distill it until you've beaten the death out of it. Literally beaten the bad chemistry out of it.
Right.
But it's still ethanol. It's still ethanol. So do the math. $1.59 for 190 proof gallon of clear liquid. I beat the holy hell out of it. Let's say I get an 8/10 of a gallon. Let's say I get 4/5 of a gallon. Okay, well that's still 4 750 bottles that I'm in 40 cents a bottle for the juice, and they sell it to you for $20, and you consider that good value?
Yeah, well,
That's the vodka business, Michael.
that sounds about right from our discussions. I remember having a similar conversation like that before. So
yeah, plus class plus label. Still, that's the vodka business. That's not my vodka business.
Nope.
That's not my Leisure Rye vodka business, but that's their vodka business.
So the way I remember describing the rye vodka was it's pretty much the same flavoring as the white label. Because the white is basically everything that all the other flavors are based off the white, is what I remember.
Yeah, the recipe is the same throughout our 5 expressions. That's the number one thing for everybody to take away from this, is the recipe never changes. Our expressions are just different still play and different barrel play. That's it. How do we use the still? How do we use the barrel? So the vodka has to be cooked at a higher proof. You have to cook vodka at 165 proof, I believe, or greater. And then we just got to water it down to 80. But we use the same recipe that we use for our white, black, red, and Patriot for the vodka. We just have to double distill it. We actually distill twice to get the proper cooked alcohol by volume type. And then we just water it. But it's still just soft and sweet and got beautiful mouthfeel. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
I'd rather drink it without ice. And again, I'm one of those I like the harder flavors, but that is not a hard flavor. I don't need ice in it. In fact, my palate loses flavor with ice.
Yeah.
So I won't do it to any of the expressions. I just pour it in a glass and sit down and just start sipping. What can people expect as far as the flavors? Let's run through that real quick, because we're just about at the end here. What can people expect out of each flavors on the main 4, from white to Patriot?
So on the white, you're going to get a floral. You're going to get a floral scent and a sweet taste. And it, as you know, it makes, in my opinion, the best Bloody Mary, pink lemonade.
Yep.
The white is like having a vodka that actually has more flavor. Our vodka is the same as the white, only a little less flavor. So if you prefer your liquors to have less flavor, you go with vodka. A little more soft, sweet flavor, you go with white. Obviously, the black label is new barrel, so it's a little smokier. Perfect in an old fashioned. I still say we make the best old fashioned on the planet. I challenge any liquor type to an old fashioned head to head. I'll bet you anything we come out as the superior. We've got a furrier in Omaha that says the billionaires that come in to buy their wife's furs say it's the best old fashioned they've ever had, and can't make it with any other liquor than our black label.
Nice.
I love our black label for that. Our red label is a used barrel or a mature barrel. Unlike many distilleries, we use our barrels 4 to 5 times. The reason we do that is we get deeper into the cellulose of the barrel. We get away from the smokiness that was taken out by the first time it was used, creating black label. and we get into soft, sweet, a little more vanilla, a little more cherry, and you can get through a bottle of Red Label, the whole bottle accidentally, because it does not wear on your tongue, it does not wear on your throat. It's just a very friendly, neat product. And then lastly, Patriot, which is double distilled, double barreled. We talked about that earlier. No one can double distill a liquor, and after you've distilled it the second time, it still has the flavor of a barrel, but it's clear in color. I actually can. I being Iowa Legendary Rye, not me personally.
Sure.
And what's cool is we take a bottle of black. We actually take 3 barrels of black to create 1 barrel of Patriot. It takes that much when we distill it, but those 3 barrels turn into a clear liquid that has a barrel flavor to it. And we put it back in a barrel, and we get just a thick, syrupy, soft, high proof, kick you in the head and
Some beautiful, there's some beautiful earth tones that come out of that. I've got some dark chocolate out of it here and there, and this is we've heard from a couple of whiskey somms that have sat there and went, we don't know how you did it, holy shit, where do I get it, that kind of thing. It's a real beautiful flavor for those that know that I like cigars. I'll sit down with Patriot cigars all day.
Not a cheap bottle. Not a cheap bottle. It's
super worth. I'll tell you what, pound for pound, dollar for dollar, it's like a Corvette, which is basically the best. Again, the best sports car you can buy for the dollar.
Yeah.
Still out on the road today.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'll put it up against Uncle Nearest, Booker T's, or any other high proof. No questions asked. Tastes better, feels better, better mouth feel, better aftertaste. They serve it in the Aria High Rollers suite.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Last I checked at Caesar's Palace at the cigar bar, they where it's served in the speakeasies it's served, there's nothing like it. And I can say that's true of our whole line. I mean, our line goes from $19.95 up to $199.95. Take solace in the fact that it's all the same recipe. It's just how long did it take us to get to it? How many steps did we have to take? How many barrels did we need to use? That's how we set our prices. But I can assure you this, you try our product from the 19 to the 199, you will not be disappointed. It is like nothing you've had. And I believe that with all of my heart. I'm betting my entire life on it. That's what I say. Yeah,
you are. I've seen it. I've had them all. I love them all. They're guys, I know I sound biased. I'm an island boy. I'm supposed to be a beer drinking fool. I stopped drinking beer years ago because it just didn't make me feel good. I tried this and I was just like, oh, here we go. I found what I'm looking for. How can people, other than the website, which we mentioned, which is iowalegendaryrye.com, links down below in the comments. If somebody wanted to find you, where can they find you?
So we're in 22 states physically, 44 states e-commerce.
If somebody wants to find you to talk to you, maybe have you share a story again. Yeah.
702-278-5000 is my personal cellular. I text. Best way to find me is text me so I can schedule some time to chat with you if you want. I got no problem talking to anyone. And obviously you find our products at iowalegendaryrye.com or sextros.com, which is my grandmother's last name. We market under Sextros in some states that have a problem with the word Iowa, and we do Iowa everywhere else. But between sextros.com and iowalegendaryrye.com, you can find us, and you can find me on my cell. Pretty much, you know me, Michael. 7 days a week. 65 days a year. I got some really fun stuff coming. You think what I've told you so far is funny? You should hear what I'm going to do in the town of Templeton next.
We will be talking soon, because I remember there was an acquisition that happened in Templeton, and I'm very excited to hear the rest of that story. So.
You get a kick out of this one. This is just over the top, buddy. This is just mean. It's just mean, but it's mean in the right way.
Perfect. I'll definitely listen. We'll have you back because as things progress, we definitely want to keep in touch with the story of Iowa Legendary Rye and its progression and its reclamation. So make sure that you guys keep an eye out. There'll be another one sitting here with Heath again. As soon as we hear the next phase is up and done, we'll bring him back. We'll have him again. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out. Heath, thank you, brother, for coming and sharing. I know there's a lot more. I would love to sit here for a couple hours. Unfortunately, our listeners can only hang in so long because probably about to walk into their office or get on the next call. So thank you. Appreciate you, brother.
Be well, brother. It's good seeing you, Michael.
Thank you. Guys, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, don't forget there's a subscribe button down there with a bell next to it. Hit that bell so you can hear when we get more cool stuff like this. Listening on any of the podcast channels, make sure you download or subscribe. Write us a review. Let us know how we're doing. You're great. You suck. I don't care. Something. Please just tell us. Biggest one, make sure you share this with somebody. Everyone's story has some kind of inspiration for someone. Someone's going to click for somebody and they're going to go, oh, shit, that's it. Cool. Right on. Send it out. Let them know what's going on. Share a Java chat with them. Thank you very much. Love each other. Take care of each other. Stay up. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And live. Myself, Coffee with Mike, and for Heath Schneider. Ciao for now.
For more information on Java Chat, visit www.javachatpodcast.com. You've been listening to Coffee with Mike on Java Chat. Tune in weekly to this podcast for the next episode. You can also download or subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. A production of Oasis Media Group, LLC. Located in Las Vegas, Nevada. Copyright 2019. All rights reserved.